האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dobro V'Yetzer. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Va'era, and we're going to do the first part of Os Beis, section number 2. It's a very long section, so we'll just be able to do the first part. Very, very, I think, interesting and unusual material. So we're going to look at 3 psukim before we begin in the Zera Shimshon, 3 psukim from last week's Parsha, the end of Parsha Shmos, and then the first pasuk in our Parsha, and that will set the table for us to understand, to be able to understand the way that the Zera Shimshon begins this section, Os Beis, section number 2. So here we go. This is Perek Hey, Psukim Chaf Beis through Chaf Gimel, and then Perek Vav, Pasuk Aleph and Beis. Again, the last 3 psukim in last week's Parsha and the first Pasuk in our Parsha, Parshas Va'era. Vayoshav Moshe el Hashem Vayomar, and Moshe returned to Hashem, and he said, Hashem, Loma Hariosa La'am Hazeh, Loma Zeh Shalachtoni. Hashem, why have you done evil to this nation? Why did you send me? Ume'oz bosi el paro ledaber bishmecha, and from when I came to Paro to speak in your name, Heira la'am hazeh, he has done bad things to this nation. V'hatzel lo hitzalta esamecha, and you have not saved your people. So Moshe is saying, Hashem, you sent me to save the people, rescue them, and take them out. Meanwhile, Paro has made things worse, and he's taken away the straw, and things got better. Things got worse. They didn't get better. So why did you send me? That's the end of last week's Parsha. And then moving, there's one more pasuk over there in the end of Parsha Shmos. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and Hashem said to Moshe, Atos sireh asher es el Pharaoh, you will see that which I will do to Paro. Ki v'yad chazaka yishalchemu v'yad chazaka yigarshem me'artzo, because with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will chase them out of his land. That's how Parsha Shmos ends. Then we move to our Parsha. First pasuk, Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, Vayomer Elov, and he said to him, Ani Hashem. So it's important to notice that it says Vayomer Elokim el Moshe. The Elokim represents the Midas Hadin. So Elokim spoke to Moshe indicates that Hashem, his Midas Hadin, his attribute of strict judgment, was speaking to Moshe because Hashem was disturbed by something Moshe did. What was Hashem disturbed by? So the Medrash Rabbah, and Rashi brings it down here, says Hashem was disturbed by Moshe questioning Hashem's actions and saying, why are you doing bad things to the people? That's why the Midas Hadin, the word representing the Midas Hadin, Elokim, starts off our Parsha, Vayedaber Elokim, and with that background and context, we can get into the beginning of the Zera Shimshon here in section number 2, Os Beis. Medrash Rabbah, the Medrash Rabbah, but Parsha Zo, on our Parsha, Parshas Va'era, says, Al Pasuk, it brings in a Pasuk from Koheles as a comment on this issue about Moshe being, Hashem being upset with Moshe because Moshe questioned what was happening with him being sent on a mission that didn't start off too well. So the Medrash Rabbah points that out and brings in a pasuk from Koheles. Ufonisi ani liros chochma v'das v'holelus v'sichlus. In Koheles, Shlomo HaMelech says, I turned my heart to see. I turned my gaze, so to speak, to see wisdom and knowledge and madness and folly. What does that mean? Meshehayisi machkim umare la'atzmi she'ani yodea das haTorah. I thought I was wise and I wanted to see myself and I saw myself as someone who understood the knowledge of Torah. Oso hadas ve'oso habina. However, that knowledge and that understanding that I thought I had, shel holelus v'sichlos hoyu, that turned out to be foolishness and madness. It was misguided. So the Medrash Rabbah says this pasuk in Koheles teaches us that Shlomo thought his intellect, his great brilliance, allowed him to understand the Torah greater than any other person, and he therefore made certain decisions, as we'll see in a moment, and that turned out to be incorrect. Lama, why did Shlomo Melech feel this way? Ki meha adam sheyovo acharei Melech es asher kfar asuhu. That's a continuation from the pasuk. Because what can a person do after the king? They have done everything already. What does that mean? So the Medrash Rabbah continues. Mihu sheyiyeh rashai. Who is it that should allow himself, or that can be allowed, laharher achar midosov ugizerosov shel melech malchei hamlochim hakodesh baruch hu? Which human being can allow himself to kind of question or think that he knows better than the attributes and decrees of the great King of all kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Devarim shehem chatzuvim milefonov. The words of Torah are hewn in front of him. Shekol davar shuosa, everything that Hashem does, terem hu nimlach bepamalya shel mala. Beforehand, he consults with his heavenly court, the Bezdin Shel Mala, Umodia Lahem Hadavar. He makes known to the Bezdin, his Bezdin Shel Mala. He makes known to them the thing, his decisions and what he wants to do. Kedei sheyedu v'ya'idu kulam, in order that they will all know and they will all be able to testify. Ki dino din emes, that God's judgments are totally true judgments. Ugezeros of emes, and his rules and decrees are true. V'chol devarov behaskel, and all of his words are with great sense. V'chule, etc. Ad kan leshono, until here is a quote from the Medrash Rabbah. So we need to understand what's being talked about here in this excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah, kind of a lengthy excerpt, is that Shlomo HaMelech took many wives and many pilagshim, concubines, and he went overboard, so to speak, in that area. And meanwhile, the Torah says that a melech, a king, should not take too many wives, should not go overboard and take too many wives. Why? Because they can turn away the heart of the king from his service of Hashem and his leading the people in the most proper ways. So Shlomo, according to this Medrash Rabbah, that's what's being referred to. Shlomo HaMelech thought, I have such great intellect, such great brilliance, I have such a great mind that nothing can turn me away. It doesn't matter that the Torah had that concern. That's for regular people. But myself, I'm unique, I'm special, I'm exceptional, and I can marry all of these women, and it won't turn my heart away. But it turns out that towards the end of Shlomo HaMelech's life, we see that his heart was turned away, even to the extent that some of the wives brought idols and worshipped Avodah Zarah, and Shlomo HaMelech didn't stop it. He wasn't forceful. He perhaps wasn't knowledgeable about everything that was happening with all of the many wives, and so he realized that he had made a mistake, that the rule about a king not taking too many wives applied equally to him, even though he thought that he was above that concern. So that's what's being talked about in this excerpt, and that's how the Medrash Rabbah understands these statements, these psukim from Koheles, where Shlomo talks about wisdom and knowledge, which he thought he had, but it led to madness and folly when he realized that he had been mistaken and he was wrong. And after all, how can anyone question, even himself, how could he question the rulings of Hashem when Hashem always consults with his Bezdin Shalmal? And we'll see that point, Hashem consulting with the Bezdin Shalmala. We'll see that gets a lot of attention from the Zera Shimshon. Continuing, next page, column on the right. Umilvad shekavonas hamedrash temuha. Besides for the fact that the whole direction or intention of this excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah is hard to understand, and we'll come back to that in a moment as to what that means. But besides for that, meaning besides for the fact that the whole excerpt, the whole statement is hard to understand and kind of baffling, in addition to that fundamental problem, we also need to analyze a specific point. Shahatam she'ein laharher al divrei Torah, because the Medrash Rabbah seems to say that the reason Shlomo HaMelech should not have allowed himself, or any human being for that matter, should not allow himself or herself to have second thoughts and think that they know better than, warnings from the Torah. It's because before Hashem does anything, beforehand he consults with his heavenly retinue, the heavenly court. Does that really mean that if Hashem did not consult with his heavenly entourage, the Bezdin Shamala, then it would be permissible to think that one might know better than the rules of the Torah, the laws of the Torah, and to think that they might not apply to a certain person or a certain situation? So now let's understand both questions. So the first point that the Zera Shimshon makes is the whole intent, the whole basic idea in this excerpt seems to be very hard to understand. Why? Because at face value, the Medrash Rabbah is saying that Shlomo HaMelech thought to himself a certain mitzvah in the Torah and a concern that the Torah has about a king taking too many wives wouldn't apply to him. He was above that, so to speak. And then later on, he realized, no, that's not true. That was a wrong assumption. The Torah's words apply even to me and are relevant even to me. So that whole idea, the Zera Shimshon says, is baffling. How could Shlomo HaMelech ever think that? A better way, apparently, for the Medrash Rabbah to view this whole matter is that Shlomo HaMelech had too much faith in himself. It's not that he was questioning whether the rules of the Torah applied to him. It's that his starting point was that he was so brilliant and so great and had such a powerful mind and such a powerful will. So he had so much confidence in himself that's why he thought that his situation was different. It's not that he was questioning the Torah or Hashem's rulings in any way. And then later on, he learned that he, in fact, was not as exceptional as he thought. So he learned something about himself. That's how the Zera Shimshon feels we should see the matter. But the Medrash Rabbah seems to see it that Shlomo HaMelech questioned the Torah and then realized, no, the Torah was actually right. Hashem was actually right. That doesn't seem to be as accurate a way to understand what happened. So that's the basic overall fundamental problem that the Zera Shimshon has with this excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah. And then, of course, the second question is clearer. The second question is that the Medrash Rabbah makes a big deal. It emphasizes the fact that Shlomo HaMelech realized, how can anyone question Hashem's rulings and his mitzvos when Hashem consults with his Bezdin Shalmala before he makes any decision and before he made any commandment or mitzvah or ruling or action? And that implies that if Hashem did his decisions and made the mitzvos and everything on his own without consulting with the Bezdin Shalmala, then a person could question them or have second thoughts about them. That doesn't make sense, but that seems to be what the Medrash Rabbah is saying. So what is this the significance of the fact that Hashem consults with the Bezdin Shel Mala, and that's why his rulings and his mitzvos cannot be questioned, should not be questioned. Next paragraph. V'yesh lomar, and we can say Shlomo hayasover, that Shlomo HaMelech thought shehoil shechochmoso nitne lo min hashamayim chutz min hateva. Shlomo HaMelech thought that since his great, unprecedented wisdom was given to him from Shamayim beyond the bounds of nature, beyond the normal, and we'll explain that in a moment. But since Shlomo HaMelech viewed his intellect in that way, that it was a miraculous gift from Shamayim, it's impossible that his intellect would come to a point levovo machmas hanoshim, that it would turn his heart away from the following Hashem's paths because of the wives. Umishum hochi omar, and because of that he said, Ani arbe velo asur, I will be able to multiply and have many, many, many wives. Velo asur, and my heart will not be turned away. I will not be turned away. And the reason, the Zera Shimshon, the reason why he thought that is because he had been given this tremendous brilliance as a gift. That's a reference to Sefer Malachim Aleph. If you look at the 3rd chapter, Perek Gimel of Malachim Aleph, you will see that Shlomo HaMelech had a dream, and in the dream Hashem asked him, what would you like? What gift can I give you? And Shlomo HaMelech said, Hashem, you've placed me as the king on the throne of the Jewish people. The thing I need the most, that's most important to me, is wisdom to judge the people, to understand their concerns, to understand the Torah, and to understand how to teach it, and the Torah and the mitzvos to the people, and lead them the right way. I need tremendous knowledge. I need that gift of a great intellect to be able to be successful in my role as the melech, as the king and the judge and the ruler of the people. So in the dream, Hashem responded and said, because you didn't ask for wealth, and you didn't ask for a long life, and you didn't ask for the destruction of your enemies, things that other new kings would ask for, because you did not ask those things, and instead you asked for knowledge, I'm going to make a special gift of extraordinary knowledge to you that like no one has ever experienced or had before. And in addition, I'll give you all the other things as well. So Shlomo very accurately viewed his incredible brilliance as a gift from above, a gift min hashamayim, a gift from Hashem. And that's why he thought, I received this great gift of this incredible, powerful mind. It certainly won't lead me astray, even if I have so many numerous wives. Next paragraph. However, la'achar shehirgish ba'atzmo shechata, after Shlomo HaMelech realized that he did in fact sin by going against the rule and had taking too many wives, and some of the wives did in fact turn his heart away from an absolutely strict adherence to the Torah and mitzvos, and he didn't handle certain situations properly regarding these wives. Hodeh b'fiv, he admitted with his own mouth, he himself confessed, Shema sheniralo, that which appeared to him, shechachmaso yisera al shar b'nei adam, that his wisdom was in excess of the wisdom and knowledge that belonged to other people. Lo hoya ela holelus v'sichlus, that was only a foolish way to think. Ki meh ha'adam sheyavo achrei hamelech, because which person can come after the king, meaning which person can have second thoughts and understand things better than the greatest king, Hashem. Because it should be impossible, it is in fact impossible for any person to have second thoughts after Hashem's rules, Vilomar, and to say, Gezeros elu einon trichos, these particular rules are not necessary for me. They don't apply to me. Shahare kol mashehu oseh, terem nimlach b'pamalya shel mala, because before Hashem does anything, decides anything, makes these rules, he consults with his heavenly court, Kadesh yedu v'ya'idu shedino din emes v'chule, in order for them to know and testify that all of Hashem's rulings are truthful. That's obviously a repetition of the Medrash Rabbah excerpt from the beginning. V'hainu, next paragraph, the Amrina b'per kama da'avodah zarah. This idea of the heavenly court and being able to talk about the mitzvos and Hashem's mitzvos and rulings and judgments all being true, this is reflected in the first chapter of Maseches Avodah Zarah. Torah dichsiv ba emes, the Gemara over there says, the Torah, which is written about it, that it is true. You can see in the parentheses, that's a quote from Mishlei, that the Torah is emes, it's true. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh ba, Hashem cannot do with it, with the laws of the Torah, lifnim mishuras hadin, anything beyond the actual strict law, the line of the din of the law. Hashem himself cannot go past or exceed the line of the law. He must follow it because the Torah is emes, it's true. And when you're dealing with truth, you have to be very careful. And even Hashem, so to speak, has to be very careful to follow the Torah exactly because, and the rules of the Torah and the laws of the Torah, because it's emes, it's truth. Lefi shahatorah nigmara, because the Torah was completed behaskamas habezdin shel mala. The Gemara says the Torah was completed with the approval of the bezdin shel mala. Vehem gozru shetia emes netzach selo va'ed, and they decreed, the bezdin shel mala decreed, that the Torah should be true eternally and forever and ever. Ume'ata i'efsher sheyitnu l'shlomo chochma yisera kol kach. And once we understand this idea that is stated in the Gemara in Masechta Avodah Zarah, that the Bezdin Shel Mala is, so to speak, enforcing and insisting that Hashem makes no exceptions to the rules of the Torah and that they be followed exactly, we'll come back to that point in a moment, then it's impossible to think that Shlomo HaMelech's great wisdom, Shelo Yosor Levavo B'Harbos Nashim, could not turn away his heart because of his great wisdom. His many wives couldn't turn away his heart, the Im Kain, because if that were true, meaning if Shlomo really was exceptional because of this gift of great intellect, and therefore the rule about not taking too many wives didn't really apply to him, if that were true, top of the next column, Legabe Shlomo, if that were true regarding Shlomo, lo hoyusa nires gezerah zo emes, then this decree of the Torah would not appear to be true. So what's being said is that if things were left to just Hashem, let's imagine Hashem didn't consult with the Bezdin Shel Mala, and Hashem made rulings and judgments, and Hashem formulated the Torah, and never consulted with the Bezdin Shel Mala, then Hashem would have, hypothetically, the leeway and the flexibility to bend the rules, to do things that are outside the bounds of the Midas Hadin. And then Hashem, for example, and this relating to our situation, Hashem could say, Shlomo HaMelech, I'm going to give you such a unique and special, unprecedented gift of intellect and brilliance that some things in the Torah, I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. They don't exactly apply to you. Every other person and every other king, no matter how bright they think they are and how smart they think they are, they are limited and the rules apply to them and they shouldn't take too many wives. But you, it doesn't apply to you. You can take as many wives as you want and you can go overboard, so to speak, and it's okay. it won't affect you in the negative way that the Torah says it will, because it doesn't apply to you. So the Zera Shimshon is saying that might work if Hashem did not consult with the Bezdin Shel Mala. But since Hashem consults with the Bezdin Shel Mala, consulted with them before developing the mitzvahs in the Torah and before every one of his rulings and every one of his decisions and judgments, they, again, kaviyochel, so to speak, the Bezdin Shel Mala, hold Hashem. They say to Hashem, the Torah is emes, it's true. And since it's emes, there can't be any departure from the truth. Otherwise, it's not total emes. And therefore, there can't be an exception, even for Shlomo, even taking into account the tremendous gift of unprecedented wisdom and knowledge that was granted to him. So we already see the answer to the second question taking shape, which is, why did the Medrash Rabbah put such an emphasis on Hashem's consultation with the Bezdin Shel Mala? Answer, because it's the Bezdin Shel Mala, so to speak, that keeps Hashem honest. Hashem, you can't bend the rules even for Shlomo HaMelech. And all the rules apply to him as well as all other people. There's no exceptions, even though it's true that he received the gift of absolutely exceptional knowledge and wisdom. Next paragraph. Bishlomo im haya HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh hakol levado, it would make sense if Hashem had done everything himself. Hayisi omer, then I might have been able to say, shelif omim ha'ov mochil legabe berei. Sometimes a father shows some flexibility and shows special forgiveness for his own son. V'chein hamelech lefamim mochel gizerosav legabe ohavo. And so too, a human king sometimes waives certain rules for one of his good friends, close friends. He might do that for a close friend or a relative. And when Hashem gave so much wisdom to Shlomo, you might think that Shlomo would be able to take numerous wives, more than the Torah thought was appropriate for others. Because we have a rule that when someone gives, they generally give with a generous eye. So, and certainly Hashem, who gave a gift of Chokhmah to Shlomo, would give it in the best possible way. What's the best possible way? To give the gift of wisdom to Shlomo without any limitation. Shlomo, you are so wise. Hashem, we're positing, could have planned. Hashem, I'm giving you, Hashem could have intended to say to Shlomo, I'm giving you such a special gift. I don't want there to be any boundaries on it, and you can therefore marry as many women as you want, because nothing will turn your mind will not be turned away from the correct paths of Torah and mitzvos by these women. That's what we might have thought if Hashem did not consult with the Bezdin Shel Mala, but Hashem did consult with the Bezdin Shel Mala, and therefore we can't have that whole idea about Hashem doing everything on his own and bending the rules for Shlomo HaMelech. The Efsher Nami, next paragraph, and it's also possible, Mishum Tam Zeh Lo Nosan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'atzmo HaChochma L'Shlomo. It's possible, now that we've developed this whole idea of the very vital role of Hashem's Bezdin Shel Mala, it's possible that that's why Hashem did not give this exceptional gift of Chokhmah, of wisdom, to Shlomo himself. Elo b'haskamas habezdin, but rather it was done with the approval of the Bezdin Shel Mala. Kedichsiv, as the pasuk in Malachim says, "V'Hashem nosan chochma l'Shlomo," and Hashem gave wisdom to Shlomo. V'chol mokom shenemar v'Hashem, every place where it says "and Hashem," mashma hu uveis dino. This implies that we're not just talking about Hashem; we're talking about Hashem and his Bezdin. So when we look carefully at the pasuk in Malachim, in Sefer Malachim, where it talks about Hashem giving extraordinary wisdom to Shlomo, we will notice, as Zera Shimshon points out, that it doesn't say Hashem nosan chochma l'shlomo, Hashem gave it. It says va Hashem, and Hashem. And va Hashem means it wasn't Hashem alone, it was Hashem with the consultation of his Bezdin Shel Mala, Kimosha Kosav Rashi, as Rashi writes, al Pasuk, on the Pasuk, Vayehi bachatzi halayla, and it was in the middle of the night. Of course, this is the famous Pasuk about the striking of the firstborn, the 10th plague. And it was in the middle of the night, V'Hashem hi kol bechor, and Hashem struck every firstborn. So it wasn't just Hashem, it was Hashem after consultation with the Bezdin Shel Mala, Rashi says, and that's why it says V'Hashem, and Hashem, V'ayin Sham, see there about that. Lehoros, so why does it say in Sefer Malachim, and Hashem gave Shlomo wisdom? It's to teach us shegezeras habezdin adayin kayemes, that the rule of the Bezdin Shel Mala still applies. Shemistama habezdin einam osim dover hefech gezerasam harishona, because we can assume that the heavenly court will not do something that goes against its original ruling. Meaning, since Hashem consulted with the Bezdin Shel Mala about giving the gift of extraordinary wisdom to Shlomo, we can assume that the Bezdin Shel Mala, when it gave its approval to this, only approved it according to its own rulings, namely that all of the rules of the Torah, which are emes lamito, completely true, apply to every human being, and there are no exceptions even for Shlomo. And that was the Bezdin Shel Mala's intent when it approved during the consultation from Hashem with the Bezdin Shel Mala, when it approved this gift of special chokhmah to Shlomo. So because of that fact that Hashem consulted with the Bezdin Shel Mala about the mitzvos, his rulings and the mitzvos, and so too Hashem consulted with the Bezdin Shel Mala when he gave the special wisdom to Shlomo, we see that Shlomo had no way out. He never should have thought that his wisdom made him an exception to the rule, and should have realized that all the rules of the Torah apply to everyone, no matter their particular circumstances or gifts, etc. Next paragraph. Ulefi derech zeh, and according to this approach that the Zera Shimshon developed, yesh lahavin atam, we can understand the reason. Mipnei ma machshava ra'ah. Why is it that Chazal say that if a person has an evil thought, meaning a thought to do a sin, ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maseh, Hashem does not combine it with action? That means Hashem doesn't say if a person thinks that he or she is going to do a specific aveira, Hashem says, okay, I'm going to judge you as if you did the aveira, as if you actually did the maaseh, the action that you're thinking about. Doesn't matter what you're thinking about, and maybe you're even thinking about it a lot and obsessing over it and really thinking about this sin in great detail. It doesn't matter as long as it stays in the realm, in general, Chazal say, as long as your thoughts stay in the realm of thoughts of doing an Aveira, but not actually doing the Aveira, then Hashem doesn't consider your thoughts as if you did the actions. And so the Zera Shimshon says, why is that true? And you can't say that it's because a thought can never be sinful. That cannot be the case. The Adarabba, just the opposite is true. Hu chet godol. Thoughts can actually be big sins. K'moshe amru zichronim levracha, as it says, as Chazal say there, and there is, as you can see above, Gemara and Maseches Kiddushin, shekol davar hamosor lalev, everything that is given over to the heart, ne'amar bo v'yoresa me'elokecha, that is what the Torah is referring to when it says you should fear Hashem. What does that mean? So the Gemara gives an example. Let's imagine that you're sitting in a room, and an elderly person or a great Rav, Talmud Chacham, or even better, an elderly Talmud Chacham walks into the room, and you don't stand up. You don't stand up to show respect as the Torah commands you to do. You don't show the reverence and respect due to this elderly individual, this elderly Talmud Chacham. And you justify it by saying the rest of the people in the room who might think it's something wrong with what I'm doing because I'm not standing up to show my respect, I'll just tell them that I didn't see him and I didn't realize he came in the room. Oh, now that you're bringing to my attention that he's here, you're pointing it out to me, I can stand up if somebody says something, but I'll know in my heart that I did see him come in. But Hamosr Lalev, it's only in my heart. No one else knows what I'm thinking, and they'll fall for my excuse when I say I didn't see the elderly gentleman come in. So the Gemara says, oh, if that's what you're thinking, you better be afraid of Hashem, because Hashem knows exactly what's in your heart, and Hashem knows that you saw the person come in, and you're trying to avoid standing up and showing the proper respect. So the Zera Shimshon says, so we see that what's in your heart counts. Hashem knows what's in your heart, and you better be afraid from Hashem about what you're thinking. And a person who sins through thoughts, it's as if that person is removing from himself the yoke, the burden of serving Hashem. It's as if they're saying, oh, Hashem doesn't know what I'm thinking. But of course, that's not true. And furthermore, if you say that thoughts have no significance, because you'll quote from the Gemara in Nedarim, words of the heart are not considered words, meaning in certain specific cases, the thoughts that a person has don't have halachic significance. If that's true, that a person's thoughts have no significance and they are completely not counted and they don't count for anything, they don't mean anything, then why does the Gemara say, you can see this is from a Yerushalmi in Maseches Pei, atop of the next page column on the right, that when it comes to non-Jews, Hashem says, Machshava Kimatzeh. When a non-Jewish person thinks about doing a sin, it's as if they actually did the sin. Hashem treats the episode as if they did the sin. So that can't be true. That idea, that concept about machshava k'maaseh, thoughts are as if their actions, equivalent to actions regarding non-Jews, that can't be true if a machshava is nothing. So machshavas have to be significant and real. And that same rule that a thought can be treated like an action actually does apply to Jewish people also, specifically when it comes to thoughts about avodah zarah. So there's a big major exception to the rule that if a Jewish person thinks about doing an avera, Hashem doesn't consider it as if they did the action. The exception is if they think, God forbid, about doing avodah zarah, and they're thinking about, oh, yes, I want to get that idol and bow down to that idol and worship that idol. It's going to be the most beautiful idol, and it's going to help me in so many ways. If I could just get a hold of that idol and bow down to it, boom, that machshava is like Maisa in the area of avodah zarah. V'haloa machshava eino chet, and therefore you can't possibly say that a machshava isn't considered a sin and has no significance. It can be a sin, and it does have significance. However, we said in the very beginning that Hashem doesn't consider a machshava in general by all the other mitzvos, by all the other averos that a Jewish person might think about. The Zera Shimshon started by saying Hashem doesn't consider it, when they think about it, doesn't consider it as if they did an action. So what do we do with the different sources that kind of give us a murky picture? Are thoughts about averos considered like an action in some way, or are they not? Next paragraph. But definitely you are compelled to say that a sinful thought is a sin. V'hatam she'eno mitzarfa l'maseh, and the reason that the sinful thoughts are not considered like action, we don't say, Hashem doesn't say, oh, it's exactly as if you did the action just because you had the sinful thought. Hainu kemoshe amru b'medrash, it's like Chazal say in the Medrash Rabbah, shekisha hakodesh baruch hu ba'a l'mivrei adam, when Hashem wanted to create human beings, hiflig midas rishoyim mineged einov, he separated the actions of rishoyim from in front of his eyes. In other words, Hashem had to, so to speak, put on blinders and say, I'm not going to think about or focus on the fact that I know wicked people are going to do really bad things. I'm not going to think about that or take that into account when I create human beings. I'm going to overlook that fact. The Od Amru b'Sefer HaZohar, and it also says in the Zohar, She'omra Torah lifnei HaKodesh Baruch Hu, that the Torah came in front of Hashem and said, Hi Odom da'at bo'i l'mivrei, this human being, this Odom Arishon that you wish to create, Osid hu la'arguzo kamoch, he is going to anger you. The Torah tried to warn Hashem, you want to create a person, you want to create Odom Arishon, you want to create people, well, they're going to bring you a lot of disappointment and anger. Omar Allah HaKodesh Baruch Hu, so Hashem responded to the Torah, Lav l'magona iskorina erech apayim. It is not for nothing that I am called erech apayim, slow to anger. Meaning Hashem said to the Torah, so to speak, in the Torah itself, look inside the Torah yourself, and you'll see that I am referred to as erech apayim, someone who is very slow to anger. And therefore, that I understand that I'm creating a person who will disappoint me and anger me by his actions, and so too all future human beings will sometimes disappoint me and anger me. Nonetheless, I'm erech apayim, I'm slow to anger, and so I'll be able to deal with that ad kan lashono until here is a quote from the Zohar, next paragraph, last paragraph for now. Ume'ata necheze anon, and from now let us see, meaning let us pause and take stock of what we've been saying. Hoil shehakodesh baruch hu rav chesed ve'erech apayim, since the Torah itself says that Hashem has great kindness and is very patient. Tzorich limchol arashayim. According to those ideas, Hashem and those attributes of Hashem needs to forgive the wicked. Aval kedei shaharashayim lo yuchlu lachto ulaharbos pesha. However, in order for Rishayim to not be able to just sin and multiply transgressions in the world, in order so that there's something that prevents wicked people from constantly sinning and filling the world with their transgressions, be'omram, as we said, ki al kol zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu yisnagi mohem b'midas harachamim kosov ve'emes. Even though Hashem wants to conduct himself with great mercy, nonetheless, it says the Torah is true. Klomar dayon lihipora min arashayim means Hashem is also, in addition to being merciful and in addition to being forgiving and understanding and patient, Hashem is also a true judge who will punish the wicked, will punish people for their sins. The imkain kosha, and if so, there's a problem. Man mephis. How can a person choose, literally mephis? How can a person choose lots? How can a person decide how Hashem will act? Umahu hachet asher yislach v'yarich apo. What are the sins that Hashem will forgive and be patient about? Umahu hachet asher lo yislach. And what are the sins that Hashem will not forgive and will not be patient about? So at this cliffhanger moment, with that very, very important question being asked, we need to stop because the Zera Shimshon doesn't just have one more paragraph. He goes on and develops his ideas that he's already shared with us. He develops them even further, and he answers his questions in a deeper way, and he brings in much more material in the second half of this piece. So let's just take a moment before we wrap up to summarize what we've seen. So the Zera Shimshon started off with an excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah that focused on the very beginning of our Parsha, in which the word Elohim is used, and the Medrash Rabbah says that represents Hashem's Midas Hadin. Why was the Midas Hadin suddenly talking to Moshe? What did Moshe do wrong? Well, Moshe at the end of Parsha Shmos questioned Hashem and said, why are you doing, you sent me, but you're doing bad things to the people instead of saving them. I thought this was going to be 1, 2, 3. I show up and Paro lets the people go. That's what I was hoping for. But Paro made things worse. Things have gotten worse for the Jewish people. So the Midas Hadin came and Hashem said to Moshe, you shouldn't be questioning me. And that led to the discussion in Koheles about Shlomo HaMelech, also kind of second guessing Hashem and thinking it would be okay for him to marry many, many wives. And in the end, Shlomo realized and says in Koheles that he made a mistake and he was wrong. And the Zera Shimshon wanted to discuss what actually went on with Shlomo. What did he originally think? Was it more that he was trying to second guess, so to speak, Hashem, or he was making a mistake about his own abilities and capacities? And also, why did the Medrash Rabbah talk about, not really talk about, but feature and emphasize the role of the Bezdin Shel Mala? Why is that so important that Hashem consults with the Bezdin Shel Mala? And so the Zera Shimshon developed an answer to that second question, that the Bezdin Shel Mala, so to speak, keeps Hashem in line. And when Hashem wants to show favoritism or bend the rules, like Hashem might have done with Shlomo, the Bezdin Shel Mala says, nope, emes. Torah is total emes, and therefore its rules have to apply to everyone equally, and they apply even to Shlomo with his incredible gift of great brilliance and knowledge. Thank you for joining in the Zera Shimshon this week. We look forward, B'ezras Hashem, to learning again in the Zera Shimshon on next week's Parsha.